This is Nathan Lindorf with The Rational Independent, part 3 of Jeffrey Toobin on the PBD podcast. And this part in particular is focused on Trump's mishandling of classified information as it compares to Hillary Clinton's behavior when she got in some trouble for the same thing. The purpose of these videos is to help us learn how to rationalize our own positions better and express those opinions and positions as well-reasoned and articulate as we can, and to understand the other person better so that in turn we can have a meeting of the minds. Perhaps we change someone's mind, perhaps our mind gets changed, but either way we develop trust and respect, and that builds a civil society. Also, to help us spot people who are not arguing in good faith, who are, for one reason or another, attempting to manipulate the conversation to a different end or a different purpose. And I think this is this whole conversation's interesting, but this segment, if I recall from listening to it, is particularly illustrative of some of these concepts. So let's dive right in.
The difference from the Hillary Clinton and the Joe Biden situation comes along. They were never asked to give back. And they found the stuff and gave it back voluntarily.
Well, not Hillary. Well, no. Hillary destroyed, and hold on. Hillary Clinton had all the Blackberries destroyed. She had a server in her basement in her house. And as a United States Air Force veteran who had top secret clearance, that was just all over.
That was done.
Understand that if we're having a conversation for people who are not seeing eye to eye, if we're talking about things that are crucial and important, where we are in disagreement, okay? We can make claims. We probably eventually need to back up those claims, all right? And we can make argumentation. We can discuss our reasoning for why these factual claims are important or not important, okay? I think this guy's name is Vinny. My apologies if I get it wrong. We're just gonna go with that as a placeholder. Vinny has made 2 factual claims for why he objects to Hillary Clinton's behavior and how she was treated. He said, first, she had government-issued Blackberries destroyed, which is destruction of government property. It violates rules of handling government information, documents, etc. It's problematic, to say the least. He also said that she maintained an independent private server that held classified information, which is a violation of proper handling of classified information. Black and white, the way the law is written, if you are not the president and you possess classified information that you're not supposed to have outside government channels, even if you have, the way the law is written, even if you have access to classified information, it has to be handled within certain channels, okay? The concept is called an air-gapped network. The idea is there is an entirely separate computer network that holds classified information. And that classified information network does not physically connect to the public internet ever. There's no, it's called an air gap. There's no communication between those 2 worlds. That makes it essentially unhackable. That's a very good security measure. But in order for that to be an effective security measure, the classified information has to live on that network. If you think you're above the law, or whatever your rationale is, and you or your subordinates or your organization, whatever, take information off that air-gapped classified network and bring it onto the public internet, okay, onto a server that you maintain outside of the classified information, classified network, okay? And you possess that information, even if you had legitimate reason to access it and you were cleared for it and everything on the government information, on the government network. The act of taking it off that network and putting it in your own private possession, that is black letter law, that's a crime. The only person who could theoretically, and again, this comes back to the argument of the Donald Trump thing, who could make the argument and say, I'm allowed to do that, is the president. And there's actually precedent for that. If you look at how every single president has handled classified documents, going back at least a quarter of a century, you'll see that all of them accessed private information, sensitive information, classified information, whatever, in the course of their duties, and even upon leaving office, took some of that with them. Okay. So I'm just trying to lay it out clear. That's Vinny's position. One, that she destroyed government property, which is against the law. And two, that she maintained possession of classified information outside of that classified air-gapped secret network. Factual claims.
And way before any request was
No, requests are not, but hold on, but the FBI asked for it. They destroyed everything.
No, they destroyed it earlier, before the FBI.
What is she destroying, though?
But
There's a little bit of crosstalk here, but it looks like Jeffrey Toobin is saying that she destroyed the government property. So there's a layer to that we didn't discuss a moment ago. So let's dig into it. Again, we're kind of getting back into almost 8 years ago now. A subpoena is a court's demand to say, we need this information. And they give you some time to gather it and be responsive to the subpoena, and then away you go, okay? If you receive a subpoena that says, give us all of your records on your from your computer systems, all your emails from this date to this date, send it to us. And you look at those emails and you go, oh, that's going to get me in trouble. And you destroy that information. Basically, in the eyes of the law, the court is allowed to interpret that act of destruction to say, okay, you destroyed information, now we don't have access to it. We're allowed to, in one, that's a crime, but two, that allows us in the finding of this case to assume it is as bad as it is possible to be that you destroyed incriminating information. We're allowed to infer that whatever was destroyed is essentially damning information. So there's a layer here talking about that not only did she destroy government property and therefore government information, but that she also did it in violation of a subpoena, i.e. there was an investigation. The court said, we want those phones so we can see what's on them. And she said, destroy those phones and then tell the court, hey, we don't have the phones. We can't give them to you. They're destroyed. And Jeffrey Toobin is saying she destroyed them before the subpoena was issued. Okay, as a lawyer, maybe you can make that distinction and say, I guess it's a little better that you did it in anticipation of a subpoena instead of in response to a subpoena. But you're still destroying government property. It's still a problem.
But you're allowed to destroy anything. I mean, in your private property.
And now we get conflation. He's now saying you're allowed to destroy your private property, which is not, it's misrepresenting what Vinny said. Vinny said she destroyed government BlackBerries. He's saying you're allowed to destroy private property. Oftentimes when you're dealing with someone who's not arguing in good faith, they will intentionally misrepresent the position that you took. And you have to be careful to articulate clearly what your position is. Otherwise, the other person will weasel their way out of it or turn the conversation to be about something that's not even your position.
You're allowed to do anything you want.
It's a little weird.
It's a little suspect.
That's a little weird.
But it was. Maybe
shady,
it's a little suspect,
it's
but it's not a
shady, but not
crime.
illegal.
It's not. It's there's no.
Yeah.
There's no
That
claim that
shouldn't
it's
be
a crime.
That shouldn't be
Well,
so. So
but
for
if you-
example, let's just say
you have a cell phone, right?
yeah.
If today you want to destroy your cell phone,
It's not a government
crime?
issue. No,
But
the just.
And that's the thing. Watch how this just happened. 3 people in this conversation are talking to Jeffrey Toobin. And now they're saying, well, wait, shouldn't that be a crime? And he presents the hypothetical. If you destroy your cell phone, should that be a crime? That's not what we're talking about. And Vinny, to his credit, brings it back and says, no, you're misrepresenting the position. Let's see where it goes.
That's not a
just
government
anybody.
issued cell phone.
That wasn't
again, no, those are all black. That was all of her staff's BlackBerries. They destroyed them, and then all her emails. They did that white. What's it called, Rob? Where they took all that white shit where you.
He's not technical. The software is called BleachBit, and it's a marketing label. You're not actually bleaching bits. The short version is it's a form of secure erasure. This is actually something I do have some technical expertise in, but it basically overwrites the data on a hard drive such that it's impossible to recover it. So Vinny is alleging that she physically destroyed BlackBerries to make the data irretrievable from those BlackBerries, and then went to the email server and wiped out the email server and took the hard drives that were running on the email server and overwrote those, securely erased them, so it was completely unrecoverable.
You can't ever see a bleach bit. That's what it's called, bleach bit. Come on, Jeff, if you can't admit that there's a double standard right now, and the day that the indictment comes out, it was the same day that we found out about the Hunter Burisma.
This is something Vinny does, and it drives me crazy, but this is important for you if you're looking to learn to rationalize your positions better, to argue more effectively, to understand the other person, okay? Sometimes you have to give room for the conversation to breathe. Vinny has made a strong case, a strong point to say destroying government property, bleach bit, all these things with Hillary Clinton is a problem. And then his mind basically says, we're all in agreement on this, even though no one else has said anything yet. I've got a little head of steam under me. And now with the Hunter Biden thing, we have competing media narratives, and we're alleging media conspiracies to talk about how there's a double standard in the way this is handled, both in the media and in the law. And after bad news comes out for Hunter Biden and therefore Joe Biden, we have bad news relating to Trump. In other words, here's this issue that we're trying to nail down. Here's another issue. Well, now which one are you talking about? If you start mixing in multiple unrelated things, it gives an opening where someone is weaker on one issue. If you bring up another issue, they get to address that, and you're going to forget about this issue, and you never actually hammered it down.
Well, everybody, the timing is perfect.
But Hunter Biden was prosecuted by Trump's.
And he is so happy that he did that because he knows he's in trouble with Hillary Clinton. Her behavior is egregious, not acceptable, frankly criminal from my perspective. But he doesn't have to talk about her anymore. Now we get to talk about Hunter Biden. Not only that, we get to talk about Trump, because he's saying that Hunter Biden is being prosecuted by someone who is appointed by Trump. So he's taken the conversation and in a matter of 2 sentences, take an opportunity, an opening that Vinny gave him. And now we're talking about Trump versus the media.
U.S. attorney in Delaware.
Okay.
Merrick Garland recused himself. This was entirely a decision by Trump's U.S. attorney. How was that Joe Biden protecting his son? I mean, that was not, Joe Biden and Joe Biden's attorney general had nothing to do with it. The whole issue.
It's very excellent to see the way these two go back and forth, because on the one hand, you have someone who's passionate, someone who cares about these things, someone who's a very smart person. He knows what he's doing, okay? But rhetorically, he is not as skilled as Jeffrey Toobin. And Jeffrey Toobin has now taken the conversation away from destroyed BlackBerries, away from BleachBit, away from Hillary Clinton, and now he's turned it into Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and begun to make the case that Joe Biden did nothing wrong, that Merrick Garland recused himself. This isn't at all anything anyone did wrong. So how on earth could any of this Hunter Biden prosecution nonsense be any of our fault? Well, our hands are clean. Look at this. And now we're left to discuss a topic that he wants to talk about, which is Joe Biden and Merrick Garland are guiltless and blameless. This has been 20 seconds. If Vinny hadn't offered that extra point and said, hey, listen, we're hammering this down, if he just stayed on point and let Jeffrey Toobin try and defend that, where does the conversation go? But instead, nope, I'm going to give you an out, and he takes it. Because a skilled rhetorical, someone who's skilled at rhetoric, someone who's skilled at argumentation, again, a trained lawyer, a gifted communicator is going to pursue their agenda using whatever openings you give them.
Was the whole prosecution was conducted by someone appointed by Donald Trump.
I think that the issue here is optics. Now, Vinny, where'd you go to law school again?
United States Air Force.
Okay, gotcha. So you're not a legal analyst, but he does have an opinion. Hold on, hear me out. Hear me
You
out.
don't have to be a lawyer. I mean,
correct.
I don't know.
My point is this: it's a lot of people who share Vinny's opinion,
I guess his name is Vinny. I got something right. Yay.
right? They're not reading tort reform, or they're not going to law school.
But I'm not
They're
dumb.
just basically saying something's fucking fishy here, bro.
But
Sometimes it takes a legal analyst to be like, hold on, this is how the law works.
Well, and also, you know, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan was someone I covered a lot, someone I liked a lot. He had something that he said something that always sticks with me. He said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts.
Yeah.
The smarmy expert thing drives me crazy, especially since effectively he did a judo flip on Vinny's point and basically won that exchange. And now his ego's getting stroked a little bit. And so he gets a chance to pontificate and talk about, listen, I knew this important person and I liked him and I covered him a lot. Look at me, I have all this history. And by the way, he said something really clever and really profound, and let's talk about it. Because I'm bringing it up, it therefore implies that I agree with it and that is my position. In other words, now he's pseudo adopting the position that I'm not even trying to put in my own facts here, that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, not their own facts. In other words, I'm the objective standard. I'm being reasonable and rational, and you're trying to put in other facts that are alternative to reality. It's very, very clever.
And, you know, the idea that, you know, Joe Biden or Merrick Garland, you know, gave Hunter Biden a sweet deal. Yeah.
And look at that. Not a mention of Hillary Clinton. We're talking about just the facts here. And clearly the facts show Joe Biden and Merrick Garland are blameless. Totally. Completely. Hands are clean regarding the investigation of his son. It's a masterclass. It's kind of gross, but it's a masterclass.
Yeah. It's just not a fact. Now, you can argue that Hunter should have been more harshly dealt with, but you can argue that it was somehow a Biden initiative that he did it.
I got a question for you.
The position that he's taking is that unless you have a smoking gun, unless you have video evidence of Joe Biden instructing Merrick Garland or instructing this prosecutor or whatever to give his son a sweetheart deal, that he is therefore blameless. That's not how politics work. You don't survive a half a century in politics like Joe Biden has without being clever, without building systems around you that enable you to use cutouts, to use indirect language, to use quid pro quo and favors and a variety of different ways to operate in that political sphere so that you get what you want without it looking like you're making the system give you what you want. Anyone who's thinking and walking around and has enough sense can see that setting the standard that says President Biden must be proven to explicitly be calling for this, otherwise he's innocent. That's not how this works, okay? That's not how political operators work, particularly at this level. And if you let him set that standard, then it shifts the narrative. And again, hats off to Jeffrey Toobin. I can see why CNN keeps him around in spite of the skeeviness. He is gifted at tweaking the rhetoric and the direction of the conversation in a way that's difficult to detect.
For you, I got a question for you. So let's just say if I have 10 people that at one point in my life were best friends.
Okay, remember this now. I've forgotten about this. PBD has a particular bug in his ear. PBD has a particular bug in his ear in relation to the theory that people who are close to the Clintons commit suicide at an unusually high rate and under suspicious circumstances, from which we can infer that the Clintons have people killed. Okay? That's a theory that's been out there since the 90s. It's been out there a long time. Now, I'm no fan of the Clintons, but I'm also not a fan of unprovable conspiracy theories. My thought is, bad people do bad things. That happens. But generally speaking, the most effective way to deal with bad people doing bad things is identify those things that are clearly evidence-based, solid, credible allegations, and get him in trouble on that, okay? It's kind of the Al Capone theory. The idea is Al Capone's a very clever mobster who utilized cutouts and surrogates and all sorts of things, and so they couldn't pin any crimes directly on him, so they got him on tax evasion, because they could prove with evidence how the money flowed and that it violated the law. The simple truth is Hillary Clinton should be in prison for the way that she handled classified information as Secretary of State. It's not acceptable. It violates federal law. She should have been indicted. She should be in prison. That's my take on it, okay? But that's not what we're talking about. We're going to talk about something that's almost impossible to prove, i.e. the theory, conspiracy or whatever you want to call it, that the Clintons have people killed who are politically inconvenient to them. Whether or not that's true, since it's not provable, why burn a lot of time on it? All you're going to do is inflame tensions, and the conversation's going to go in non-productive ways. I try and give a thorough read of these conversations. I want you to see as much context as possible, so I don't tend to skip around. I'm going to let this run. I'm not going to give it a lot of analysis, only because it's not very fruitful. But let's see how, frankly, Jeffrey Toobin, if I recall correctly, is going to push back and say, it's a conspiracy theory, it's nonsense. We're going to let this all kind of blow through, and then we'll probably call it there, but let's see.
And prior to meeting me, they had never done cocaine before. These 10 people, 10 out of 10, eventually became cocaine addicts and killed themselves, simply by association with me. I probably have some bad influence on these people, okay? This lady named Hillary Clinton, one too many of her best friends or close friends have committed suicide in the random ways. She is not the most trusted person, even by the left. She was supposed to be president. You were not alone. Everybody thought that was 3:30 in the morning. I'm on a call with...
And this is one challenge I have with PBD. I like a lot of what he does, but he talks in paragraphs and clauses, okay? He starts with an analogy that's a little tortured, but I kind of get it, talking about how correlation leads to smoke, where there's smoke, there's fire, etc. Friends of the Clintons commit suicide, okay? And then he goes, she was supposed to be president, but she's not trusted by the left. And then he goes to a particular story where he says, it was 3:30 in the morning when I realized that she wasn't going to be president. So we have these nesting ideas, and it gives someone like Jeffrey Toobin the chance to kind of pick apart what he's saying, because he speaks in kind of circles and clauses.
And he's saying, we're silenced, like, on what's going on. You know the video with all the people losing their minds, crying, all this stuff.
I mean, the New York at the convention.
Yeah. The convention was already set up.
Yeah.
She called, all this stuff.
Sure.
Nobody believed it. But why? Because people didn't trust her mess. Some of the stuff that came up, even with Comey said what he said, and that didn't help her 2 weeks prior to that. The level of double standard with how she handled herself, that for sure is there. There's no questions about it. When you say something like, well, you can do whatever you want to your phones and you can do whatever you want to this, I get that. But if the other guy would have said, hey, accidentally these files burned. There was a fire in Mar-a-Lago. Oh, it wasn't.
So now we've gone from conspiracy theory to election night and all that stuff. Now he's responding to something Jeffrey Toobin said 15 minutes ago, saying Shouldn't you be allowed to destroy your personal stuff? And rather than pushing back and saying she destroyed government property, not personal property, which is the more accurate and concrete counterpoint, he's saying, talk about the double standard. If the subpoena came to Donald Trump saying, give us these classified documents, and Donald Trump said, whoopsie, we had a small fire at Mar-a-Lago and all these documents are destroyed. Sorry. Do you think that the government would have, that the media would have just said, oh, okay, well, that happens? Similar to how they tried to brush under the rug the destruction of the phones. It's not a bad counterpoint, and it goes to the larger theme, but it's not the direction I would have gone.
You guys would have lost your mind if you would have said there was an accidental fire. All I'm saying is I'm talking only to libertarians and independents. I'm not talking to Republicans, and I'm not talking to Democrats. I'm not even talking to rhinos. I'm not talking to Lincoln Project folks who cannot stand Trump. I'm not standing to Bush folks. I'm not standing to McCain folks. I'm not talking to those people. I'm talking to independents and libertarians, like a Joe Rogan, like a Musk. These are people that were voting for the left. These are people that wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders. Joe Rogan wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders, is who he wanted to vote for. This is a guy that was for legalizing marijuana, totally okay with LGBT.
So this is a fairly long rant, and he's covered everything from conspiracy theories to election night to Joe Rogan wanting to legalize marijuana. Joe Rogan supporting Bernie Sanders, who wanted to legalize marijuana, to destruction of personal property and a fire at Mar-a-Lago. Like, all of this in basically one monologue. This is one of the downsides. This is one of the things I don't like about PBD, particularly from a rhetorical perspective. It's just kind of this shotgun approach. So where are we going to go with this?
You know, his friend, totally okay with this. Is like, there's something really fishy here. So the Hillary Clinton's never going to lose your loyalty. You're not going to say, I'm going to flip. You're not going to do that. And people who are on the MAGA side, Trump's not going to lose their loyalty. It's just not going to happen. Right. That's naturally there, right? It's like a Yankees fan. How often does a Yankee fan who's been a Yankee fan since 6 years old become a Red Sox fan at 60 years old? Just not going to happen, right? So if you're going to convert religion, you do it early. If you're going to convert teams, you're going to do it early. If you're going to convert politics, you generally do it early. But the people in the middle who are kind of like, let me see what he has to say. Mm-hmm. And let me see what he has to say. Come on, bro. What are you talking about? You're saying to me that Hillary Clinton did. I'm kind of with him here. I don't agree with you because you know the argument that the left makes? And they say, Democrats want Trump as the candidate. That's who they want because he's the guy that we will beat again. Really? If that's who you want as a candidate, then don't do this stuff. Well, no, we have to indict him and we have to do New York and we have to do this stuff because we just have to do it. Well, I'm sorry, you said he's the guy that you're certain you're going to beat. Why don't you not do this? Because every time you do, his polls go up. Well, that's strategically because we actually want him to beat DeSantis because we believe he will lose to Biden and we believe DeSantis will beat Biden. We've heard all that story many, many times, right? So there's some leaks in the argument where the person who's sitting there saying, listen, I'm not there to see all the reports. And I know Adam is defending you as a lawyer saying, listen, Adam, who is Vinny?
All right. So we learned something. The guy on the left is Adam. Nothing, one. Sorry. And the guy on the right is Vinny. Nothing, two. I'll remember that in the future.
To say this. You're a lawyer. You read all these things. Totally get that. But the average voter who has this technology that we all possess, especially the independent and libertarian ones, is a bullshit-o-meter, whatever you want to call it, where you're kind of sitting there saying, I smell a little bullshitting here from one side over the other. I think that party is also sick of it, to the point where, Musk and Rogan to say, you want to save America? Vote Republican. If there was two people that you wouldn't have ever thought to say those two things, it was going to be those two guys. And they changed in their 50s, not in their 30s or their 20s. That's the community that's sitting there saying they don't trust anything from Biden or Hillary Clinton.
This is worth saying. This is worth digging into. I don't recall the exact percentage, but the short version is, if you think about it, if this is the whole American electorate, okay? And let's see, on your side, well, this is my left. this chunk of the spectrum is hard left Democrat Party down the line. And this is hard right Republican this far down the line. And then in the center, you have the independents, the mythical independents, okay? How big do you think those splits are? Is it 40% Democrat, 40% Republican, which would leave 20% to be independent? Would it shock you to realize that the section of the population that is not Democrat or Republican is bigger than either party? I believe it's something like 25-30% for each party, and something like 30-40% for independents. In other words, the chunk in the middle is bigger than the diehards on either side. And it's growing in the middle as the diehards on either side get wackier and wackier and further from the center. Interesting thing to consider.
That happens to your son, they don't trust anything.
I'm sort of amazed that we're
Like I said, PBD just went through a big long monologue, covered like 20 different topics. He does this sometimes. He's got thoughts on his mind. He wants to get that out. Where does Jeffrey Toobin go? What does he respond to? What thread does he pick up on and say, let's go this one? It's kind of a dealer's choice moment where the interviewer has given him a bunch of different things to pick up on. You can't talk about everything. So where do we go?
You're talking about the 2024 presidential election, and people, you're talking so much about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton has been out of public life for
all of that. And he goes back to Hillary Clinton. He walked away from Hillary Clinton with Vinny because he was getting kind of stuck on that issue, bleach bit of the private server that had government information and the destruction of government phones. He was feeling like he was in a bit of trouble. So he sidesteps that and takes that opening that Vinny gave him. Now, out of everything that PBD just listed, the topic that he wants to talk about is Hillary Clinton on a personal level, saying, why are we still talking about Hillary Clinton? She's a politician who's been out of politics. She's irrelevant. Why are we even mentioning her? Not mentioning the legal precedent and the two-sided nature, which is why she was brought up in the first place, the double standard in the media. But her as a person, isn't she and her personal issues irrelevant to modern politics? Which again, was the softest point that PBD listed, the easiest to attack. And that's where he goes.
for 8 years. I mean,
Well, I put Hillary and Biden in the same camp.
Well,
That's
all
what I
right,
mean
but
by it. That's what I'm
anyway,
saying.
I mean,
Yeah.
but Biden is certainly, appropriate to talk about.
Yeah.
And Musk and Rogan,
I only brought up Hillary because you brought up Hillary. You brought up Hillary early. I don't bring up Hillary.
No, actually, I think I brought it up in response to what he said, but that's fine. Whatever.
No, you brought up Hillary when you said, when I got it wrong in
Oh, okay.
2016.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what I
that's
brought
what
up.
started.
That's what I'm
true.
saying.
Yeah,
I never
no,
brought up Hillary.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
As I certainly was wrong in 2016. I think presidential campaigns. This is something Bill Clinton often said, and I think he was right. Is that presidential campaigns are always about the future, and how you envision the things going forward, and. What I can never get my head around is that we often view these campaigns as a form of theater and who's more likable, who's more trustworthy. It's like these have real world consequences, and that's why I think abortion is such a big issue, because it's not about like who's more likable. It's like a big difference in people's lives depending on the outcome of the election. And same thing about climate change. I mean, you have people, have one political party.
One thing that you'll find with skilled communicators is that they will have rehearsed talking points. They'll have things that they want to hit, their topics, and they want to make certain points as they're doing their media rounds. And that reinforces the overall narrative. And one of the narratives is that abortion is a swing issue in this election. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's a complicated topic. It's an important topic, but we can't really go into it right now because he's bringing it up and no one else is really biting on it. So it's kind of a one-sided thing. It's convenient to him politically. He's going to bring it up. He's going to hammer that point because that's useful for him politically. So it's not really a substantive debate on abortion. He's bringing it up as the concept of abortion and the threat of a national ban on abortion from a federal legislative level, he thinks is an issue that will motivate his base to get out and vote for the next election. And now, comes out of nowhere, no one has mentioned it. It's not related to anything we're talking about. Climate change. Because that's convenient. Let's talk about that. The only reason to bring that up is because that's one of your talking points as a disciplined, skilled communicator. That's one of the things that you want to hit given an opening. So PBD gives them just a laundry list of things to talk about, but starts it off by talking about conspiracy theories that are difficult to prove with Hillary Clinton, which allows him to respond and say, she's personally irrelevant. Why are we even talking about her? And bam, everything that PBD just brought up is done and resolved. None of the rest of that stuff matters, okay? He went too broad with what he said, and so he made no progress in the conversation. He filled up some time, he got a chance to speak his mind, but it made no impact on the conversation. Now we're talking about climate change? How'd we get here? Except that Jeffrey Toobin, being skilled as a communicator, has taken charge of the conversation and is now taking it to talk about the things he wants to talk about.
Party that thinks it's not a particular problem. You have another political party that thinks, the government has to mobilize against it. That to me, and maybe that's just a flaw in how I see politics, but I see it as more substantive than the theater aspect. But I recognize that a lot of people are.
And this is my thing, Jeff, and I respect your opinion, but my thing is when people say stuff like, "That's back then. It was Hillary. It was 8 years ago." People.
Vinny's a bit of a bulldog. He's got the bit in his teeth, and I'm actually kind of rooting for him here because he's made the most traction. He's made Jeffrey Toobin the most nervous in this conversation by keeping the conversation focused on those elements of Hillary Clinton's behavior that are the least defensible. Very effective. Not conclusive, and he lacks a little discipline in how he presents his messaging, but he's on it. He's got his thing. So let's see where it goes. And then we're going to wrap up.
People like me come up and they say, I just want accountability. I don't give a damn if it happened 30, 50, 8, 10, JFK assassination. We're finding out the CIA was involved. I want people to be held accountable because, for instance, you see the Russia thing. We just found out that was literally Hillary Clinton set it all up, paid, Fusion GPS. They all set them up. Now the public is like, wait a minute, can we hold her accountable? We had to be dragged through CNN, which was.
Now, this is useful. It's interesting. He's not going back to what he said. Now he's bringing up a new issue. And while it is still Hillary Clinton, he's bringing it up, and to his point, Jeffrey Toobin is saying she's irrelevant, except that we spent 3.5 years of Donald Trump's presidency, basically up until COVID, arguing that he was a Russian cat's paw. The foundation of that argument was basically opposition research commissioned by a law firm paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign. That's all public knowledge links. So he's bringing that up partially to say she's still relevant because the media, i.e. CNN, the place you work for, continues to push narratives she created. By the way, here's a funny thing. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine. 2016, Donald Trump got in trouble. The media hammered him for saying, I don't think Barack Obama was born in America. And they call about, he's a birther. It's a conspiracy. Where's his birth certificate? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Do you know who originated that? Do you know who was the first group of people to publicly present that as a concern about Barack Obama? Hillary Clinton and her campaign when she was competing against Barack Obama. That was the first time that was raised as an issue. Now, whether or not Donald Trump should have seized on it and kept running with it and whatever, here we have, why is she relevant? Because for better or for worse, she puts things into the public consciousness that continue to be substantive issues constantly discussed by the electorate and by the talking heads and by all the people in these circles for years and years and years. That makes her relevant, for better or for worse.
Was the biggest mouthpiece for that big ass lie for all those years. Now we find out Hillary was behind it. That was the real collusion. Hold on, Jeff. And no accountability. The DNC got fined like $8,000 for dragging us through that nonsense for all those years. We want accountability. And when you destroy phones, Jeff, it's not her cell phone. When your whole staff is government-owned cell phones and you're destroying evidence, and then hold on, and Adam, you talked about Attorney General Loretta Lynch with James Comey. They're about to, she would have been, her charge would have been gross negligence, which is, you could go to jail, correct? For gross negligence. Why all of a sudden last minute they changed it to extreme carelessness? One side has it way better than the other side. And when you have the FBI kind of leaning towards the left, which we've learned, Jeff, you can't lie with Peter Strzok and Lisa.
He's on a roll. He's making good points. He's making too many points. He's assuming agreement. He's saying, you can't lie. You can't disagree with this. Everyone sees this. He's got a lot of passion. He makes good points, but he rhetorically is giving his opponent wiggle room by opponent? Yeah, they're definitely on opposing sides. We'll call them opponents. Giving him wiggle room, throwing out red meat to people who think like him, who are already convinced of this. But if you bring up this many issues to a lawyer, the lawyer is going to squirm and find a way past any one of them, which conversationally means he's past all of them. It's a neat trick.
It's a page and the whole FBI, and we keep finding out stuff with the Twitter files. They lean way more left than they do right. I just want somebody to be held accountable for what they did. That's just my point. That's it.
I respect your point, and I think, you are very concerned about accountability. I think presidential elections are going to much more about the future than about who's accountable for what happened.
Forget it.
And just like that, you have all these strong feelings. I'm going to validate your feelings. You want people to be held accountable. But presidential elections are not about vindictiveness or claiming justice for past wrongs. It's about forward-thinking, positive vision. Where are we going in the future? That's a very American ideal. I don't disagree with him. I think substantively he's correct. What Vinny is saying, though, is that there's a growing portion of the population that is fed up with the fact that in the government, no one is held accountable. That's a problem. People should be held accountable to the law. And if you want us to take it seriously, when the left suddenly wakes up and says, let's hold Donald Trump accountable, and you say, wait a second. Selective accountability is not what we're interested in. Either you give them all immunity or you give none of them immunity. But we can't just give immunity to your friends and go after your enemies. That's Banana Republic stuff. That's substantive. That's pertinent to this conversation, to this election, etc. But Jeffrey Toobin wraps all of his emotion in all those allegations, doesn't engage with any of them because they're all messy for him, and says that's all backward looking. Forward looking, we're looking, none of that is relevant to the future. And that's where we're going to pause today's segment. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Everyone, good luck out there.